Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, or good afternoon if you're tuning in from the States. Welcome to the latest episode of the Hard Compound Live. For those of you who don't know, my name is Rich and I run and operate the Hard Compound. We're a one-stop shop for all things motorsport, whether it be two wheels, four wheels. We cover F1, IndyCar, touring cars, bikes, rally, NASCAR, anything you can wave an exhaust manifold at. And we do that in the form of race reports, race previews, news, car unveils. It's the season for that, and all kinds of things. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and on YouTube. So if you head to any of those channels, just go there, give us a follow, give us a sign up, and so you don't miss out on all the good motorsport stuff. As you might have noticed, we also do live interviews. This is actually the 52nd one that we've done. These are live on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube, and they're also recorded there immediately afterwards on Facebook. They're in the video section. We've had some fantastic guests on our show in the past, many from the British Touring Car Championship, the likes of Tom Chilton, Jake Hill, Rick Parfitt Jr., son of the Status Quo guitarist. We've also had former champions in the form of Matt Neal, Rob Gravitt, John Clennon, Steve Soper, Gabriele Tarquini, Rickard Rydell, Andy Prio. We've also spoken to Terry Fullerton, the karting legend, who Ayrton Senna said was his fiercest competitor. Real pleasure talking to him. We've spoken to some British Superbike riders. We've got some more coming up. And we've also spoken to some of the very best single-seater racers. Just to name a few, we've spoken to Mr. Stefan Johansson, to David Brabham, Alex Caffey, Mark Blundell, Mr. Derek Warwick, Ari Lyondike, Danny Sullivan, Willie T. Ribbs, reigning IndyCar champion Alex Palou, Brian Herter, Will Power, and many, many others. We've also spoken to young Natalie Decker from the IndyCar world. And we've been very fortunate. Just 10 days ago, we spoke with the legend, Jackie Ickx. And last year, we had the honour and the privilege of speaking to Mr. Mario Andretti. So those and more, they're all saved on the Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. Speaking of Mario Andretti, he obviously raced in Formula One and he's won the Indianapolis 500. And that brings us on very nicely to our guest this evening, who has done both of those things and has had great success in sports cars as well. We mentioned Mr. Derek Warwick earlier, and we've got his former Arrows teammate joining us this evening. So without any further ado, we're going to bring him in because you've tuned in to listen to him and not to me. So do join me in extending a very warm welcome to Mr. Eddie Cheever.
Hello. How come Derek? How come you called Derek Mr. Warwick and everybody else you didn't?
I don't know. Just one of those things when you get into a flow, it doesn't make him any more important.
You sure?
So to that end, Mr. Cheever, how are you?
No, I like Eddie. Eddie's better. I'm very well. Nice to talk to you.
Yes, you too. You too. And thank you very much for coming and joining us and having a chat. We're going to have a run through all things motorsport, which is going to be great. Run through your career and get your thoughts on a few things. Just want to turn my attention to the comments. Hello, guys who are tuning in already. Colin, Mark, Aaron, Peyton, Thomas, everyone, and all the rest. Thank you very much for joining us as always. If you have any questions, do pop them in the comments and we'll do our best to get to them as we run through the chat. But yeah, what we'd like to do, keep it nice and light, really. And basically, if we can, if I may, can we start right at the start? How did you get involved in motorsport?
The first race, I lived in Italy as a child. And the first race that I got to see was a sports car race in Monza. I couldn't have been 8 or 9 years old. And I remember being incredibly cold and uncomfortable and somebody dying in the race. And my father explaining all this to me. And then my next memory is receiving a go-kart 3 or 4 years later for Christmas. So there's a big gap between what I first started with, which I didn't think was very fun, to starting in go-kart racing. And I was just lucky that it was something that my father liked to do, and it was really him participating in the go-kart racing vicariously through me.
Okay,
I had a great time.
Oh, fantastic. So, I mean, what was that time gap from that first race that you didn't particularly enjoy to going racing?
10 years. 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, and I guess he just, quite wanted you to give it a try, and you went along
He
with it,
liked,
maybe?
he always liked fast cars. We lived in Italy. And I think racing was very important because of Ferrari. So there was all the right reasons to bring me to the go-kart track, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, I was probably the most exciting period of my life was those first 3 or 4 years that I started racing go-karts, because everything was new. I had no idea what it was.
Wow, that's fantastic to hear. Because I mean, I mentioned in the intro like Terry Fullerton and obviously Ayrton
I
raced at
knew
Ayrton.
Terry. I knew Terry very well.
Yeah, oh, he's great, isn't he? He calls a
He's
spade
a
a spade. He's
raving
great.
lunatic. He's crazy. He
I'm glad
came
you
up with
said
a
it.
different driving style that we all emulated. Before he came, everybody was very tidy. When Terry came, you were always driving sideways, going into the corners, and he developed a complete new driving style that everybody started copying.
Yeah, I think, and he actually said that. He said like Ayrton. He sort of said it tongue in cheek. He says, "Oh, I taught Ayrton everything he knows," things like that. But yeah, he was an amazing guy, and obviously he said that he never really progressed beyond karting, but he said that was the best time of his life, and so did Ayrton, and
Uh,
so have many other people we've spoken to.
yeah, it was awesome.
It's a great proving ground. Um, so when you started, trying for, trying for yourself, was it a case of having to get some backing or anything like that, or was it just a case of just going out and racing and seeing where it took you?
No, after about 2 years of racing, we started winning a lot of races. I say we, my father and I, he would prepare the go-kart and I would race it. We started winning a lot of races. And Yame, there was the company that produced engines, go-kart engines. One was a Comet, the other one was a Perilla. And I became an official driver for Perilla, so they started paying for all of our equipment. And the other driver, who was the official the official Comet driver, was Ricardo Patrese. So
Yes.
we started
Wow.
bumping into each other at a very young age in the early 70s. So we were teammates, but I had one type of engine, he had the other type of engine. And the last year that I raced in go-karts, I won the European Championship. He won the World Championship, and I finished second. So we were primed to go do something else. But it was very intense. The period where I was racing, I started racing probably 4 races before Elio De Angelis did.
Right.
So it was a great period. The Cesaris came, De Angelis, Patrese.
Wow.
It was an amazing wave of race car drivers that all started in karting.
Yeah, and there's a great wave of like Italian races, and it sort of went again a bit later on with you had like Pierluigi Martini, Gianni Morbidelli, Larini, Caffi, and it was like Gabriele Tarquini. It was like a production line, wasn't it?
It was very
Terrific
competitive.
Italian
It
drivers.
was incredibly competitive.
Yeah, fantastic. What a great time. What a great time to be driving.
Yes, yeah.
So you've won the European Championship. Don't wish to assume, but was that like a springboard for you to get into single seat racing? I guess, was there interest from further up the ladder in
Yes.
you, or was it?
Yes and no. I wasn't particularly brilliant at school, so I think my father had to find something for me to do, and racing seemed to be the thing that we gravitated to. So I went to England when I was 17. I did a handful of Formula Ford races. Then I started racing in Formula 3, and I got very lucky, and I won at Silverstone on my 4th race. So that kind of opened up a lot of doors. And then this guy called Ron Dennis came knocking at the door, and I kind of moved. Ron Dennis.
Never heard of him.
Yeah. So it was there was a lot of serendipity involved in my life of being in the right place, the right time, right, knowing the right person. So
Yeah.
and that really changed everything. The whole way I looked at motor racing changed completely once I started spending time with Ron. And Ron kind of would organize everything, and I would just do as well as I could in the car.
Yeah.
And that we did that for 2 years, and then he organized a good contract with BMW, which had the best Formula 2 engine.
Right.
And I became part of the BMW works teams. I was racing for BMW in the German championship with Mark Surer and Winkelhock. We were the original junior team.
Wow.
And we would then go race in Formula 2. And the 77 season was fantastic. I had a really good role. I was racing for Ron in Project 4.
Yeah,
And
Project 4.
then the BMW engine was great.
No, terrific. I mean, you mentioned about like Project 4 and Ron Dennis. I mentioned, I didn't say in the intro, but we spoke with like Dick Bennett, who obviously with West Surrey Racing has done terrific things, and they're still going in the British touring cars. And he said a lot of great things about Ron, because I think he was involved with Project 4 or just before Project 4 with Ron, and he spoke very, very highly of, and obviously what Ron went on to do.
Do you know
amazing.
why there was a Project 4? There was a Project 1, a Project 2, and a Project 3. You know the reason behind all that?
I knew there were projects before it. It wasn't just like a clever name. He said there were other ones that hadn't gone on, but I don't know the tales behind.
They all went by the wayside.
Really?
Project 4 was the one that then everything went well, and he had this great success that he had. But Ron was never afraid of taking risk in anything. So I was very lucky to have spent time with him.
Yeah.
Very, very, very amazingly determined human. Very anal about every detail, and everything had to be shiny and perfect. And
which I think is how you have to be, isn't it? Especially in in the lower formulas, should we say? You've got to make sure that everything's right and instill that in people, so that you can go out and win and have success.
I saw on the right that somebody that used to work for Team Modus is Tony Brooks.
Yes, Tony. He actually had a few comments when we were posting about some of your career moments during the week, and he said, he said he was. He said he knew you and he worked alongside you. So yeah, and he said you were great.
I used to live in a motorhome outside of that factory in Foyt 3, and when they would close down the factory, I would sneak in and weld things. I actually took a front wing and tried to make a piece onto my Formula 3 car that I remember testing, but I remember sneaking in at night. Had I ever been caught, I would have been in serious trouble. I wasn't taking anything. I was just trying to learn everything.
You've been a security man running after you.
There was no security then.
Happy days. There you go. Which is why you could get in, I suppose.
Probably.
Yeah. So you had you had some success up in F2, and obviously, I've just got a note actually here in Formula 3, 1975. You raced. I do correct if I'm wrong. You raced again or alongside a Mr. Danny Sullivan.
Danny who?
Mr. Sullivan. Win.
He's another. He got the Mr. title also, I see.
Yes. Well, they were all very polite to me, so I feel like I should be polite back. But
Danny was racing with Modus like I was, and in that period there was Gunnar Nielsen, was amazingly quick, who died of cancer shortly after getting into Alex Ribeiro. I forget what the two Australian drivers were called. It was quite a good group. And when I arrived, Danny had this. It was sponsored by BP. He had this amazing BP jacket that I thought was really cool. And I asked him where I could get one, and he kind of sneered at me and said, "You have to win a race to get one of these." So I promptly set my mind on having to get the jacket more than getting the win. And I remember getting the jacket and showing him. He said, "You're not the only one to have one of these now." But you have to remember, I was only 17, so I was prone to saying stupid things then. So, but it was a great series. Formula 3 in England then was fiercely competitive. Great circuits. It was just lots of fun.
Yeah, and I remember watching a little bit later on in the 80s, and it was just as intense then. Some real strong drives. I just seen a comment from Simon Steele. He said that Larry and Terry Perkins were the Aussies.
Yes.
Excellent knowledge, Simon. Excellent knowledge. Obviously, yes. Larry Perkins went on to do well in the supercars and the Bathurst and all that kind of thing. Yeah. Went on to do very well. But yeah, good knowledge, impressive. So Danny's a good character. We had a good chat with him. He's a nice guy. So you move into F2 with obviously Bron, and I've just got a note here. Was it 1977? Took a couple of wins at Nürburgring and at Rouen, two very difficult circuits from what I can gather. And you were racing alongside Rene Arnoux, Didier Pironi, Riccardo Patrese, KK Rosberg, Derek Daly. It's a heck of a grid. That's a strong F2 grid.
So I was second in the championship, I think behind Arnoux.
Yes.
And I got an invitation after the Enna race. I got an invitation to come and test for Ferrari, which I did. Signed a contract with Ferrari to do a season of just an option to drive wherever they wanted to put me, which probably would have been Formula 2. And I went home to Rome, and I was contracted with BMW to do a certain number of other races, and I agreed to race at Vallelunga.
Right.
And I don't know if you know Vallelunga, but there's a very fast right-hander after the pits. The left wheel broke, and the car went underneath the guardrail, and I broke my hand and my elbow. And it was right after I had tested at Ferrari. Everything was looking fabulous. And I didn't get to do the last race in the championship, but I finished second.
Right. Wow.
There you go. So that's my mea culpa. I think I agreed to drive for them for like $500, which I never saw, by the way. I should call BMW and ask for my $500, but
that's interest.
A poor decision on my side.
Yeah. But no, you're saying about cars going under guardrails. Obviously, a few years earlier, we'd lost a couple of F1 drivers in such circumstances. Obviously, I mentioned last week we spoke with Jackie Hicks, and he was alongside Jackie Stewart in the safety aspect of getting these barriers sorted. And so, perhaps obviously a broken hand and elbow is not nice, but perhaps a fortunate escape in some respects, given that the accidents that had preceded it that were like that. So. Just moving swiftly. I mean, 1978, you had a few races in 78, fourth overall, and then you had your first taste of F1 with the Theodore team.
No, I have to correct you. I had my first taste of Formula 1 when I went to Furano to test for a week with Ferrari.
Ah, was that your first? That was before. Okay,
that was my first thing, and I was 18, I believe.
Oh, wow!
So I did 4 or 5 days of very intense testing. Reutemann was the other driver. Lauda was coming back from his accident in Nürburgring.
Right.
And wow. So that was my first taste. So then I had a broken hand, and it took a long time to recover from that. And I had to go to. I did not want to wait another year to race in Formula 1 since they hired Villeneuve. So I asked to be freed from my contract, which I finally was, and I ended up then racing with Theodore. Right. Entering, not racing, into the Argentinian Grand Prix and the Brazilian Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And I see somebody's asking which was the worst Formula car I ever drove. And the car I ever drove. It was by far and away the Theodore. But so I had my left hand was still kind of iffy, and I couldn't really hold on to the steering wheel long. And the first laps this car did was at the Argentinian Grand Prix. So I had raced with Ronnie Peterson and Hans Stuck in the BMW junior team at Nürburgring the previous year, and had some amazing battles with them in the wet and the dry and everything. So I was confident that I could, with equal cars, I could be still within fighting range of them. And I remember after about the third lap I did with this car in Argentina, there was a very long straight past the pits, and this very fast right-hander, and I'm talking fast, 5th gear, full throttle. Wow. And I finally worked up the courage to go into the corner in full throttle. And I remember Peterson passing me on the outside, lifting his hand, kind of like, I don't know if he's telling me to get out of the way or whatever, but his hand comes off the steering wheel and just disappears into the future. And that was my first realization that Formula 1 was not like everything else I had done in the past. This was going to be very difficult.
Wow. And he was just off and sailing away.
He was.
Wow.
He had raced go-karts on the go-kart track that I had spent most of my youth on in Rome, the Pista d'Oro. He had come and finished second like 10 years beforehand in go-karts. So my goal was always to be able to compete against or race against drivers like Ronnie Peterson. Yeah, but that is
Wow.
What
And just on the subject of Ronnie, obviously I mentioned we spoke to Mario, who won the title as a result of Ronnie's passing. It was just a real needless passing, wasn't it, of Ronnie? It really shouldn't have happened, should it?
no, none
Yeah,
of them do. I
no.
stopped counting how many drivers or friends that have died in racing, and none of them. There's always some stupid thing that happens for an accident like that to occur.
Yeah,
And in his case, it was. I was there. I was at the end of the pit lane when that happened in Monza.
Wow. So not going to dwell on it, but yeah, that one felt particularly needless from throughout history because they should have acted sooner, but we're not going to get into it. So obviously the Theodore wasn't great, as you alluded to. You had the opportunity to switch to Hesketh. How did that come around?
I got a call after I came back from Brazil, and the call was quite simple. Do you want to race for us in Kailami? And there was like a 3-second pause, and I said yes, and that was it. They sent me a ticket. And I turned up with I think I bought a new driving suit.
Right.
And I qualified, which was good.
I was going to say that was your first race experience, was it not, in F1? The first
Nothing
time
is more devastating than not to qualify for a Formula One race. It is.
Oh, I'm sure.
Formula One is so intense, and you try so hard, and you take so many risks that the whole experience with the Theodore was just mind-numbing to me. So I was very glad to get in the car and be able to race in Kailami, and I finally got to see what everything was about. And then I just readjusted some things that I had to do. I had to go back to racing, with other categories, but it was good. It was fun.
Yeah, obviously that brings us on to I think it was the following year, and you made the step backwards, I suppose. But you went back. I mean, for want of a better term, but you know what I mean. It was
a step backwards. It was absolutely. It was either that or do nothing, because. Wow. So I drove with Ozella. You're talking about the years with Ozella in Formula 2. Again, I was just lucky. He was an engine builder who had a Formula 2 car, and he had managed to convince Pirelli to build tires for them. So we didn't have much money to go testing, but we did a lot of tire testing, which we managed to do a lot of car testing at the same time we were doing the tire testing. So we turned up and we were only ones to have radio. So it was a good season. We won a lot of races, but didn't do very well. Finished, I think, 4th in the championship. And as we did that whole process, he started thinking that why shouldn't Ozella take a chance and go race in Formula One?
Right. Was there already a plan for it, or was it just a case of let's give it a go?
No. I would like to be able to weave a big complicated story for you. That's what I planned. That's not what I planned. That's what happened. I think it's John Lennon that said his life is what happens when you sit around planning. I did not plan. Ozella came to me and said, "Let's race in Formula One," so we went. And I went through the same process again with the Ozella, never testing it before I turned up at the first race. It was like 200 pounds overweight. Suspensions would break, but I was young enough to where that didn't bother me. I was just annoyed when something broke that I wasn't I was in the pits waiting for something to happen.
Yeah. And you're obviously in F1, and it was a work in progress on a budget.
I was in F1, but way in the back of the line. I mean, I was way back there. But as the year went on, we did better and better. We had a great race in Hirama, where I think we were running 3rd, 4th, and it broke. But to their credit, towards the last 3 or 4 races, we were up there. We were competitive. We figured out how to use the ground effects much better. We created a lot of downforce, so we didn't know how to use much of it. But in that period of time, when I started finishing and not having accidents, I was invited to dinner once by Ken Tyrrell.
Right. Yes.
I was in the lobby, and he said, "Do you want to have dinner?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I'd love to." That was an honor. I didn't really know him very well. And at that dinner, he asked me what I wanted to do the next year. And he said that he wanted me to sign an option to drive for them the next season.
Right.
But the date that he had to accept the option was like 2 months into the future.
Oh, I see.
Every
Right.
night I waited for that telephone call, and nothing ever happened. 2 hours before the option was over, he called.
I bet your nerves are a bit. You're thinking, is he going to call?
I was elated. And the next day, I think
cool.
2 days from them, I was invited to their factory, and where they would do the seats was like a barn, and the seat was done with clay, and it was a long process, and he was sitting there either smoking a pipe or a cigar or something. And I remember thinking, now this is what Formula One is all about. And it was marvelous. I enjoyed every minute I spent with Tyrrell. Amazing. Wow. So much knowledge. Anyways, I'm hijacking your discussion, so I apologize.
No, that's absolutely fine. I was just going to say about the name Tyrrell. Obviously, I'm in my early 40s, but there's people that I say 15 years younger than me who won't realise what innovators, Tyrrell as a team were, and Ken as himself, with just, ideas that were ahead of their time, and, even putting 2 more wheels on the car every now and again. But, they were an amazing, I forget his wife's name. Was it Norma? I can't remember his. But Ken was an amazing guy, wasn't he?
I have a good story for you.
Ooh,
so
we like the story.
I'm racing for Ken. We're at Zolder, and there was some sort of a driver's strike. We were all supposed to stand up when we went up to the line to take off. We were supposed to undo our seatbelts, stand up, and just to show that we didn't. I don't remember what the reason was. So I told Ken that was going to happen, and he told me not to do it, and I was going to do it anyways. So as it's time to stand up, I have this big, heavy hand on my helmet, and I'm trying to get out of the car, and there was no getting out. So I just gave up and sat in the car, and that was his temperament. Nothing was ever a fuss, but if he told you to do something, there was very little room to maneuver. And I used to like on my pit board to have my times on the pit board in the race, and he would never do that. And I asked him, why won't you put the pit times on the board? And he said, your job is to go as fast as you can every lap of the race. It's irrelevant what speed you're going. And if you think about that, that's a completely different approach to what you would think somebody would tell you.
Yeah, rather than thinking that's the time I need to match it or better it, he's just saying just go fast. It doesn't just go.
Just go as fast as you can. Go as fast as you can and don't crash.
Wow. Well, that's racing, I suppose, isn't it? I mean, that's in a nutshell. Wow, amazing. Just going back to our seller, I should point out this isn't a seller T-shirt. I'm not going to lift it up and show everyone, but
you got more than I did. I didn't even get a T-shirt.
I found one online. Very good.
I see a gentleman who you spotted for me on the right. Derek Sandwick is a guy who spotted for me at Indy.
Yes, he's.
Hello, Derek. He was a very good spotter. A little bit crazy, but a great spotter.
Excellent, and obviously quite modest as well. I believe Eddie's Indy 500 spotter was a fantastic help.
It was.
Yeah. Obviously, we'll come to the Indy 500 very soon.
Sorry, I'll just answer the questions. Go ahead.
Oh, no. It's absolutely fine. No, it's great to have an Indy 500 spotter on. Thank you, Derek, for tuning in. Very cool. Just so, you've gone to Tyrrell, 81, I've got, and I've got a comparison of a fourth at Silverstone. Now, you mentioned previously that you'd won a race at Silverstone in the junior formula. Was it a circuit that you like? Because I grew up loving it, and they've butchered it now, and I'm not happy because it's just up the road from me. And was Silverstone a circuit that you liked to race on?
I did. It was really fast. It was incredibly fast. Very long sweeping corners. Car balance was really important. Yes. The race I was talking about was the short circuit, which I won the first race, and then the second one was on the full circuit.
Was on the full perimeter road around it. Yeah.
I think Silverstone's lovely. I always enjoyed racing in England. I thought racing in England was just so much fun because there was so much history. You spend a lot of downtime in racing, waiting for something, the next practice session. And in England, I was continuously absorbing all these stories about Sterling Moss and Jackie Stewart and Dan Gurney. So it was fun.
Yeah, we've got a good history. I mean, it's great. I heard a really good line. Was the only reason that we didn't demolish all the airfields after the war was that so we could go racing around the outside of them.
Yeah.
We did it at Silverstone and Thruxton and Snetterton, and they're all old airfields. So yeah, why would
There
you
would
waste?
be no racing. There'd be no racing if it wasn't for England after the Second World War, because they were the ones that got everybody into it.
Yeah, just kind of a nice thing to have over here. It's quite good. I'm quite proud of that. Also, your teammate was like Michele Alboreto, who obviously we very sadly lost.
Yes, towards the middle to the end of the year.
Yeah,
but I had raced with Michele in the Lancia at Le Mans, the 2-liter Lancia at Le Mans. So I had spent a lot of time with him. Yeah,
that was the first or second entry you had in Le Mans, wasn't it? Was it I forget which one it was, but
yeah, I think no, I don't remember if I did 2 or 1. We won our category 1 year. I remember Michele being there and Riccardo Patrese being in the other Lancia.
Yeah,
that was probably 40 years ago. I don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, much less who I was racing with 40 years ago.
No, I've seen pictures of the Lancia, and it had the Martini livery, all that color scheme. It just looked fantastic. It was a terrific looking car.
It was good, actually. Little teeny engine, but it had a lot of power, and it was very reliable.
Yeah, a lot of them. Last thing, obviously, we spoke with Danny Sullivan and spoke with Stefan Johansson, and they spoke very warmly of Michele, and I think everyone did. It was very sad when he was lost.
Terrible.
Lost at Le Mans. So after a year at Tyrrell, obviously, it had gone pretty well. I'm assuming you were fairly happy there, but then you had a switch to the Ligier Talbot Matra team. How did that come about? Was it just a case of wanting to move up the grid? Money.
I had a family. I was just starting a family, and then I had a great season. We had spent the whole year with Tyrrell trying to find more sponsorship, and it was a bit of a struggle for that. It was very difficult to walk into Ken's office and tell him that I wanted to go someplace else. That was, I'm sure, very difficult. And which I really appreciated. They had a Christmas party every year, and he invited me to the Christmas party, to which I went.
Oh, and that was after you decided to move on.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
No, looking back, we got a new car halfway through the season at Tyrrell, and it was good. We had a good result in Germany, had a good result in England, but at the same time, I had a better offer, and don't forget that Ligier had almost won the championship for 2 or 3 years moving up to that. So I thought
Jacques Lafitte
with Lafitte. So my teammate was going to be Lafitte, and that was finally somebody I could measure myself up against.
Wow.
With the same car. So a lot of those things filled into the decision.
Yeah. I guess when all those things line up, it becomes a move you have to make, I suppose.
But it was not. I probably would have been better off throughout the whole season to stay, because Ken continued to develop that car, and it was very light towards the middle of the season. It was particularly a very light car, and that's a whole different discussion. But
yeah,
that was a very competitive car at the end.
Yeah, sure. I've got in the notes that year, that first year with the first year at Ligier, you had your first podium at Spa. That must have felt like did it feel like a breakthrough kind of moment, or?
The podium at Spa happened after the race, because I think they disqualified Nicky for his car being illegal.
Yeah.
So I don't have that cup. I never got that third place cup, but yes, that was the first podium. But such is life. There you go. But by the time we went to Detroit,
yes,
I was very comfortable in the car, and that race went very well. That was a funny race, because they stopped it after 5 or 6 laps for some reason. I don't remember what it was. And Jabouille, who was the engineer, designer, guru of the team, had decided right before the start of the race to put a very soft compound on the front of my car, and it was exceptional. And then when they stopped, Watson did exactly the same thing and put those soft tires on, and I ended up being beaten by Watson at the end. But it was
he came through like 17th, didn't he? He came hammering through and with everyone. I think just
Watson,
from I wrote a little post.
Watson was amazing in traffic. He was ruthless in traffic. You had two choices if he's going to pass you. You're going to let him go by, or you're going to go off. But there was not a third option.
Wow,
that was the first good result in Formula One.
Yeah, sure. I've got it in my mind's eye. There was an accident with Roberto Guerrero and someone, perhaps I can't remember, but yeah, I was obviously coming, coming second. I guess that was your home Grand Prix as well, at that time. And
I kind of had two nationalities. I was raised in Italy, so I was accepted as an Italian. And obviously, when I went to Detroit, I was probably more American than Italian too, because it felt more comfortable, I guess.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just a quick word on the Detroit street circuit. I remember it from when I was sort of very young, just getting into it. And I always remember just cars retiring a lot. A lot of cars parked at the side of the road every time I watched the footage. Was it just was it just a track that was just hard on cars, or was it just
very narrow, and there were a lot of right angles with the wall. So if you made a mistake, you didn't have much room.
Yeah,
to me, it felt like a go-kart track, which I was quite comfortable driving at.
No, sure. Excellent. So now, I mean, I've said this before in other chats. I love a street circuit. Everyone has a go at them. And they bring up Monaco. That's because the F1 cars are too big. But every street circuit's fantastic. It's maybe not as a spectacle to the fans who want to see high-speed racing and, cars going through Eau Rouge and Raidillon every week. But I just think street circuits are fantastic. And I guess they're the ultimate test, I suppose, for a driver.
You're stretching reality if you try to compare Monte Carlo with Detroit.
Yeah, but yes, perhaps not the most comparable, but yeah, I was just thought street circuits, they're going to be a bit bumpy. You're racing through concrete walls, and yeah, they just look like a challenge.
The beauty of street racing is that you're not testing there before, so if you find a good clue and you develop it as to how to make the car go fast, it's very rewarding. Whereas if you all spend 5 days at Paul Ricard testing, at the end, you know exactly what the car is going to do. You know what its limitations are. One of the best drives I ever had, and it was after I was out of Formula One, I was invited to drive the Beatrice Ford at Detroit.
Yes, 86.
It was unfortunate I didn't get to drive that car in other places because it was really a nice, balanced car.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a question there just on the side there. We've got like Chris McMahon. How did the 86 Haas Ford feel to drive? And he's just asked it again. There we are. It said, yeah, Patrick Tombe rated it as the best F1 chassis he ever drove. The team had some great people. Just a pity Ford were late to the Turbo F1 party. Not sure that
it was a wonderful car. I really liked it. It was very easy to drive. I had been out of a car for about 6 months then, and I got a call from Haas. So I grabbed one of my old Alfa Romeo suits, took all the stickers off it, and turned up at the race, and it was really good. It was quick. Unfortunately, a dry shaft broke, but it was really a nice car, and you could get it right on the limit, and it was very comforting when you got out of line. You could always bring the car back, which at a place like Detroit, that's very necessary. Otherwise, if you let the barriers bother you and you think you're going to hit them all the time, sooner or later you will.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I guess if you can take that or like minimize that in your mind, then obviously you're gonna go better, and the car helps.
Unless you're Senna, that Senna never worried about anything. So
no.
He came from a different planet.
Yes, absolutely. Obviously,
Senna.
Yeah, we'll move on to Evan shortly. Just a quick backtrack. I mean, we mentioned 82. Obviously, it was the year that we lost Gilles Villeneuve at Zolder. You were in quite close quarters, weren't you, to the accident? Obviously, we don't like dwelling on this kind of a thing, but obviously you were there, and I spoke with Derek Warwick, as I said, and he was first on the scene. And what were your memories of that incident and
I
of
was
Gilles.
behind. He had just passed. No, he was behind
Was it
Mass.
Yeah.
Mass. He was behind Mass. And they went around the left-hand corner. And the next time when I came around the left-hand corner, he was like a doll in a catch fence.
Oh.
And it was horrible to see. It was just dreadful.
Yeah. I mean,
His seat, I think when he must have hit his wheel, gone up in the air and came down nose first, his seat disengaged.
oh goodness.
The car went one place and he went in the catch fence.
Yes, awful. I mean, we've all seen the footage, and we all wish we hadn't. But yeah, he's obviously seen as one of the great losses.
1 second.
Yeah, not a problem. Amazing.
There we go. Sorry.
Yeah, not a problem. Not a problem. Yeah, he's obviously seen as one of the great losses. You know, he was, for anyone who saw him race, obviously I was unfortunately too young to have seen him, but yeah, from what I've heard, he was something quite special.
As brave as brave can be.
Yeah. Which it had to be. Yeah, obviously very sad day. But obviously, his son Jacques went on to do rather well, which is nice to see. The following year, you moved to Renault alongside Alain Prost. Something I've always wondered: did you sign as a number 2 to Alain? Did you know you'd be number 2 to Alain? Because he obviously became.
Hey, let me take a step back.
Yeah, go for it.
So Lafitte had almost won the championship before I went to Ligier. He was very competitive. So I raced against Lafitte, and I had a better year than he did.
Right.
And I ended up the race, I think, with a 3rd place in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
With an old car, with a new car that they finally got it working. So I was feeling confident. And when I went to Renault, I did sign as a second driver. That's correct.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I'd always.
But that was they didn't want to have the problems they had with Arnoux and Prost going at each other.
Yes.
But when I did sign, they hadn't made the rule yet. They made some changes in the rules that were going to take away a lot of the ground effects that they had. We had an incredible amount of downforce. And Renault had a very great turbo engine. They had a lot of power. And when I tested the car for the first time with the ground effects, it was amazing. Then they changed the rules. And it took me a long time in the wintertime to get comfortable with that car. But yes, I did sign as a second driver, and I was glad I signed. I never had any problem that something was not given to me because it was given to Prost. That was never an issue. That's what did happen is that I had a lot of mechanical issues. That things were in Monte Carlo. A piece of electronics fell off. In Germany, when I'm running in the top 3 in front of Prost, the accelerator cable came off. Then when I'm in England, some other stupid electron. So by the time I got halfway through the season, I was fed up with it. I just kept having a series of trouble that just took all the steam out of everything.
I'm sure that must have been so frustrating. I mean, I've got, in that year though, you had four visits to the podium, and obviously that showed what you could do and what the car could do, but the thing kept breaking. I mean, it must have been soul destroying at times.
Oh well.
Yeah, these things happen. I think it was due to some of those mechanical issues that Renault lost the constructors title that year. Some issues towards the end with you and with Alain. Was it to do with that?
The team imploded in Holland, and it never recovered.
Right. But they decided to replace you and Alain. Was it? Were you just told that you were going to be moving?
No. I had an invitation to remain.
Right.
In Germany, and there was a meeting I was supposed to go to, and I didn't go to the meeting for other reasons, non-racing meetings. I didn't go to the meeting, and that I guess from that point on, there were other problems they had to solve it, and I think everything just came to an end. They went and made wholesale changes, and Tambay and Warwick, I believe, drove for them afterwards. But
Yeah. All right. No, I see. No, I always wondered what happened there, but no, thank you for clearing that up. So you moved to Alfa Romeo Benetton team. Was that alongside Riccardo Patrese again that year? I can't remember. He was around there at the time, wasn't he?
With Patrese.
It was with him.
Yeah. And I finished fourth in the first race and never got another point.
Again, that must have been more than a little bit annoying. It must have been frustrating again.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Yeah. I always thought those cars looked great, but what were they like to drive?
Yeah. It's a stretch for me to find positive things to say about the time I spent at Alfa Romeo.
Right, I see.
But, there were a lot of changes. I remember we went to Monte Carlo once, and we went from a mechanical drive system, fuel system, to an electronic system, and I qualified fifth. I thought, "Wow, this is amazing." And then everything kept breaking. My car would break, Ricardo's would break. Wow. It got to the point that we were at each other's necks all the time because the cars were just so uncompetitive that if anybody had something, the other one wanted it or not. It was just terrible. It was a nightmare.
Wow.
It was a nightmare. But they in everybody's mind, it should have been like a team as competitive as Ferrari, but Pavanello, who was running the team, his previous experience had been just Formula 3 cars. So it took them a long time to get up to speed, and they were always changing engineers. And Kitty, who was the engineer to start with, was gone. Then another engine guy was gone, and Tonti, and then it was like a ping pong ball going from one side of the room to the other.
Just like no continuity at all. Just it's just what a shame. But I guess that happens sometimes. At the end of that season, where were we now? 80, 85, 86. Were you becoming disillusioned at all with F1 because you went to do sports cars, or was it just?
No, I really loved racing Formula 1. I thought it was something I wanted to do as a child, and I had great times, and I had times that were not so great. Yeah. And that's kind of, life gives you. To be able to drive a Formula 1 car is for a race car driver is amazing. That's as high as it gets. There's nothing on top of that. No, so I did not want to get in a Formula 1 car that wasn't competitive. So yes, I focused on Jaguar, which I really racing for Tom Walkinshaw was very satisfying. We had the best car, and that was the first time in my career that I really had the best car. Right. And I had a great time in that best car. I mean, it was amazing. Yeah, I'm sure. I did 2 Le Mans with that car. We should have won both of them. I remember Derek and I started off we were supposed to do two stints each. And just to make sure the other driver had bigger rest, we ended up doing 4 stints. Like he would do 4 hours, I would do 4 hours. And it was going great. We had some stupid screw come out of the gearbox or something. We had it in the bag, and that was that. So of all the races that I was in a position to win that didn't, for whatever the reason was, I would say Le Mans is the one that is the most irritating.
I'm sure. Something as small as a screw or something as
but it makes no difference. It makes no difference whether it can be a $500,000 piece as the same result as a 10-cent piece.
Yeah, but frustrating. Whatever.
But having a Le Mans win in the record books, I think is very special. So my son now races sports car. I hope sports cars. I hope he gets to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I said, some of the guys we've spoken to some of the guys who've been lucky enough to win it. Stefan Johansson and and David Brabham just over my shoulder here. And they both said it was probably the biggest thing they did. But yeah, it's one of those races that doesn't get the coverage these days, and it really should. Certainly on these shores, we have to pay a lot of money to watch Le Mans, which is, you may as well go. But no, you had great success, and those cars are now some of the most memorable ones in the history of Le Mans. Those silk cut sponsored Jaguars, they were terrific looking things, weren't they?
Very fast, great handling.
Yeah,
amazing car to drive. It's amazing drive. It's at Spa. You would take Eau Rouge flat. You go down to the bottom of the hill flat all the way up without taking it. It was a big car, but it had had a great engine and a lot of downforce.
Wow, that's fantastic. And that was the era that I got into sports car racing as well. So I've got very fond memories of watching. Obviously, I wasn't as fortunate as you to be able to drive them, but but again, it's got a note in '86. Again, you won at Silverstone again, so it just seems to be a circuit that suits you.
That was a good win. They hadn't raced in 30 years, and to win in Silverstone, that was for the Brits. That was a big deal.
Yeah,
that was a big deal. I remember Tom Walkinshaw being very happy. I did the last stint in it, and we had to save fuel, if I can remember correctly. Right. We did, and we won. And it was, and don't forget, we were racing against Porsche, which were the dominant.
Yes, the 956, wasn't it? Yeah,
and we cleaned their clock. I mean, it was very satisfying. Driving for Tom Walkinshaw was very cool.
Yeah,
he was very motivated, and he had a great team, and he gave the drivers a lot of responsibility, and he just delivered amazing machines. It was just the whole concept, carbon fiber, the sports car had never been seen, and Tony Southgate and the engine and the whole everything was just perfect. And there was a big competition in the beginning between Derek Warwick and I, because we had just gotten out of Formula One and we were racing sports cars, and all we cared about at the beginning was being fastest, whereas you have to be very altruistic in a sports car to finish the races. But by the end, it was good. And then the last year I drove, I had to pick a teammate as a second driver, and I picked Raul Bozel, and he went and won the championship.
Wow! Right.
So that was good. That was a good thing. So
that was a guy you competed against later on over on your side of the pond, which we'll come to very soon. But no, excellent. Love hearing the memories of the Jaguar team. 1987, you're back in F1 with Derek at Arrows, and you had a few good years there. This is where I remember sort of hearing about you first. I was 6 or 7 at the time, and I just remember it was always seemed to be you and Derek running together in Arrows. You were very evenly matched, and he said the same thing when we spoke with him.
Well, we might have been running together, but I was in front of him more than I was behind him.
Oh, vital detail. 2 Arrows cars.
Remember the Italian Grand Prix, you could not have put a sheet of paper between the two of us, but I was lucky enough to be third and he was fourth.
Yeah. How did that move come around, and what was the car like to drive? Because I remember it had the flat.
I think it was the first car that Ross Braun had responsibility for designing. It was a good car. I think the Megatron engine, which had been previously the BMW engine, was not being developed anymore like it had been done at Brabham, but it was a good car. I really enjoyed driving for Arrows. I liked the team. I liked the way everything. I thought Oliver was was a good guy to drive. He had been a very successful Formula One driver, so it was somebody who actually knew what you were going through, and it was good. I enjoyed it. I liked racing with Derek. Derek was good.
No, great. Again, I've got another little thing. I think it was 1988. You came third at Monza, and I've heard something about a bet involving some sunglasses. Was that with
the crew chief?
Was it the crew chief?
Yes. Yeah. Jesus, where'd you find that out?
Oh, I just well, I have downtime, kids are asleep, do a bit of research for an interview, and that one came up somewhere.
That cost me a pair of sunglasses.
Was it a case of if you get it on the podium, I'll?
I forget I just remember giving him the sunglasses.
No, he obviously said if you put it on the podium, I'm going to have your sunglasses, something like That was great. And again, you took third in Phoenix in '89. That was very much your home race, obviously where you were born. That must have been a little bit more special, perhaps, than the other trips to the podium, or was it just?
Yes.
Or were they all good?
I didn't know that was going to be the last podium, but yeah, it was
Yes,
good.
I think it was the last one.
I enjoyed that. It was a very hot race. There was a lot of mechanical problems. I spent most of the race right behind Patrese, who I think was driving a Williams then.
No, it would have been, yeah. Oh, we might have lost an internet connection, folks. Not sure what's happening here, but don't worry. We said to Eddie, if this happens, he can click on the link and he'll be back on soon. It might be a power issue. Put 20p in the meter, but Eddie will be back shortly. I'm very sure. Thanks to everyone for the comments and for tuning in. I'm just going to sit here and ramble on just for a while, just while Eddie comes back, because we're just coming on to his time in IndyCar. The season has started today. IndyCar. I'm not going to tell you who's won, but very exciting finish in the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg in Florida. Just going to get my emails on my screen in case Eddie wants to send me a message. Yes, I'm sure Eddie will return anytime soon. If you want to put some comments in, please do. Ask some questions. Laura Beck's fantastic interview. Thank you. Hopefully it's not the end. Eddie will be coming back soon. Just for those of you who are tuned in, if you're liking your F1 stories, we have got another live interview coming up in about 10 days' time. We're going to be announcing it this week, and it is with a former Formula One driver. Slightly after Eddie's time, raced in the 90s, and we're not going to give any more away than that. But he did race for one of Eddie's former teams, so I'll leave that with you. See if you can guess who it might be, but it will be coming during the week, and we have got some other live interviews coming up as well. We've got a current British touring car driver coming up, a couple of British Superbike drivers. We've got some past IndyCar drivers, Indy 500 winners, champions, pole sitters, winners, rookies of the year. Trying to think who else we've got. Quite a few. But also, if you're tuning in for the first time, as I said at the start, do head over to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, search for The Hard Compound. We post 2, 3, 4 times a day on various types of motorsport. And if you're interested in your motorsport, then do come and give us a follow. Just in a comment, Craig Homer, need to get Jack Harvey on. We would love to get Jack Harvey on. A Brit doing fantastic things out in the States. Obviously, just moved to the Rahal Letterman Lanigan team. And yes, we'd love to get Jack on, but it takes time to get people to respond to us because they get a lot of messages. So no, we'll certainly try. We're also, we're trying to get Roman Grosjean on, but he is a man very much in demand. So we'd see if we can do that. But I just want to point you in the direction of some of the interviews that we did previously. I mentioned at the start, and I've mentioned to Eddie, obviously we've spoken with Derek Warwick, with Alex Caffey, Stefan Johansson, David Brabham from the F1 world. We've spoken to Gabriele Tarquini, possibly the most unlucky racing driver in F1, always got shocking machinery, but did very well in touring cars. We've spoken to Tom Coronel, who, as we know, bit of a lunatic, but a lovely, lovely, lovely guy. Just last week, spoke to Jackie Ickx. We spoke with Mario Andretti. We spoke to J.R. Hildebrand last year as well, and that was very interesting hearing his thoughts, especially with what happened to him at the end of the 2011 Indianapolis 500. That's a very, very good chat. Very, very enjoyable. With the most knowledgeable man about cars that I've ever spoken to. So he was terrific. And if you are a fan of British touring cars, we've spoken to most of the grid for this year. So there's a few of those in there, but we're not just all about interviews. We do race reports, previews, car unveils, on this day posts, and things like that. So yeah, plenty of motorsport stuff going on. And as we know, there's lots of cars being unveiled. Obviously, the Alfa Romeo team, which Eddie, via a convoluted route, has got, drove for, and it's gone through to today. Very smart looking car. Done a little post on that. So yeah, do give us a follow. I am just refreshing my emails here just to see if Eddie's having any issues coming back on. It may be an internet issue, it may be a power issue, but we're not sure. Yeah, here we are. If you've got any more people that you'd like to have interviews with, then do let us know. We'll try our best. We're working on a few things. We're working on a former World Rally champion coming to join us, which would be excellent if we can get it over the line. As I say, just one moment. I've had an email from Eddie. He just says trying to get back online. No problem at all. I'm just going to respond to him. Unfortunately, folks, this does happen. This is the perils of the perils of being live. I'm just going to respond to him. These things do happen. It's happened in the past, and it will happen again, I'm sure. Craig Homer, Dave Richards. That would be a very good guest. But yes, unfortunately, this is the perils of being live. You can script things. I've got my notes here, but sometimes technology lets us down. It let me down at this end in the chat with Jaya Hildebrand, and we had a chat with Andy Prio where his internet connection dropped out. So it happens, but when you can ramble on and talk nonsense like I can, we'll be absolutely fine. But so I've got let's play a little game. Can you drop in the comments where you're tuning in from? It's always nice to see where you guys are from. That'd be always wonderful to hear. Just trying to think of some of the other guys that we've got in the pipeline. We've got quite a lot in the pipeline. One of them is a British touring car champion, which will be a really, really, really good chat. We have got a broadcasting legend from North America, which is going to be very, very good. We've got an Indy 500 winner. I'm just going to have a quick look through my notes here. We've got, oh, crikey, who have we got? Let's have a look. Where are we? Oh, yes, that's going to be a very good one. Yes, very good one. We've got a number of ex-Formula One drivers and a few others, but we've got someone who has driven for the fabulous Minardi team. Now, if you have been following the page, on Mondays we've been doing a thing every few weeks called #Minardi Monday, just looking back at everyone's favorite cult F1 team. Absolutely fantastic, and we've managed to grab someone who drove for them, among other teams. So once we've got that one over the line, we'll definitely have a chat with that person. I'm sure he's got some fabulous tales. While we're on the subject of poor teams in F1, we spoke with Perry McCarthy, who obviously drove for the infamous Andrea Moda team. Absolutely fabulous stories from Perry. He's an after-dinner speaker. He's very, very funny. Very, very clever guy. And of course, he was the original Stig on Top Gear. So if you're tuning in from the UK, you will be very familiar with the original Stig. He's the one who was launched off the back of an aircraft carrier, and there was a glove floating on the sea. That was Perry. But no Perrys were harmed in the filming of that. Okay, let's see where everyone's from. Okay, everyone. Not in the UK. We've got Simon Steele from Buckinghamshire, UK. Colin Hart, Cheltenham. Craig Homer, Hertfordshire. Glenn Goodwin, Telford. In Shropshire. Tony Brooks in Norfolk. Thank you for tuning in, Tony. I remember you put a few comments on some of our posts about Eddie. Some amazing roles you've held in motorsport. Very good. Chris McMahon tuning in from Akrotiri in Cyprus. My goodness. Oh, surely it's warmer out there than it is here. Michael Skeet from Southampton. So yeah, a few people not too far down the road. Bruce McLaren. Blimey. Tuning in from Italy. Wow, that's very cool. We love to have Italian folk on. I've always said that I should have been Italian because because I love all the Italian food, and you like fast cars and football, which are things very close to my heart. I'm still, no further word from Eddie. Just checking. Always very, very good. No, nothing yet. So, yes, folks, do stick with us. I'm gonna keep rambling until I hear from Eddie saying that he really can't get on, but it's absolutely no problem. we've got plenty of things we can talk about. If anyone tuned into the IndyCar earlier on today, as I said, I'm not going to tell you who won, but it was a terrific race. Do let me know if you tuned in. And also, before we go any further, obviously we do all love motorsport, but there are far more important things going on in the world, and I think we can all extend our best wishes, thoughts, prayers, if you're that way inclined, to everyone in Ukraine at the moment, because what's happening out there is absolutely awful. And obviously we can't condone anything that Mr. Putin and his military group are doing. So if anyone ever does see this from out in the Ukraine, we're all thinking of you, we're all supporting with you, and we all stand with you, because that goes beyond anything right now. Kay Warren from West Sussex, welcome. Thank you very much for letting me know. Had a few people asking about Eddie Cheever's crash helmet design. It's on the notes, don't worry, because it is one of the coolest, isn't it? It's one of the best crash helmets ever. Oh, Craig, just watch Craig Homer. Yep, watch every race, although may skip Nashville after last year's joke. Fully agree. Yes, that felt like a Netflix moment, didn't it? The IndyCar race out in Nashville. It was already, it was all built up to be a fantastic race. And it felt like it was just one for the photographers going over the bridge there, get some cool shots. But the race was an absolute farce. I mean, was it? Obviously, very pleased to see former F1 driver Marcus Ericsson win the race, but to run, to go over the back of I think it was Sebastian Bourdais. He went over the back of Sebastian Bourdais, slammed his car down, pitted 7 times, and still won. The circuit wasn't quite up to scratch, but it made for good TV. But I don't think that should be the basis of a race. Hopefully, they'll sort it out for this year. While we're on the subject of IndyCar, as you may have noticed previously, me and a few of my colleagues here from the Hard Compound are heading out to the Indy 500. So, and we have a ticket for sale. So if you want to get it, then do let me know. And Eddie has just returned. Mr. Cheever is back. So we're going to bring him in. I'm going to press the button.
I touched the brakes. I lost internet. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. I've just been vamping and rambling, and it's absolutely no problem at all. It does happen. So yes, thank you for coming back. We must be doing something right enough. So where we got to? I think we're talking about Phoenix, weren't we? The final podium in F1 and the team. Yeah, I think you said about Patrese being in a Williams. We'd got as far as that, and you were behind him.
Yes, I was behind him most of the race. I remember it being very hot. And it was, I did enjoy that. I'd have to say that was one of the most enjoyable podiums I was on, because we did not start the race with a car that should have finished third. It was right. It was brutally hot. It was very hard to finish just to get to the end, but I had a good car, and it ran very well. It was very, it was good. It was good. But but Formula One at that point for me had gotten to be, a good season would have been a podium or two. So I had gotten out of the circle where you were going to have access to the best cars. So sure. I think I had reached a point where I had to go do something else, which I did. I signed a contract with Jaguar, and then I got a call, a good contract with Jaguar. Then I got a call from the States, somebody called Chip Ganassi, who I had no idea who it was. Yes. Who wanted to know if I wanted to race in Indy. Right.
I mean, were there any options for F1 for that following year for 90?
None that I pursued. I didn't. I never. None that I pursued. No.
Right. Fair enough.
At that point, you were right. But previously, you asked me if I had become disenchanted with Formula One. I wasn't disenchanted with Formula One. I was just tired of racing for a third place, because when you had a McLaren that had 100 horsepower more than you did, and they're running twice as much wing, it was like an exercise in futility.
Yes, it was. I guess you were never going to be, challenging that car. Obviously, you mentioned about Chip Ganassi and IndyCar. Very quickly, before we come to that, someone actually sent me an email earlier on saying, "Can you please ask Eddie about 1987 at Jerez in a sports car race?" And you officially weren't supposed to be there, or something about hadn't signed the clearance or something like that.
No, I didn't sign in. Yeah, and they made such a big fuss about it. You would have thought I I don't know, I had defrauded somebody. We're not going to allow you to race because you were trying to drive without signing in, or whatever. I had 2 problems like that, once in Germany and once in Spain. Whatever.
Was it all red tape?
Amazing the things people remember.
Yeah. I must admit, I actually wasn't aware of that, but they emailed me. I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds fun. No, great. No, good. Was anything done after it, or was it just?
I had to go up to the chief steward and fall on my sword and thank him for allowing me to race, Your Highness. We did that. And then if I remember, I think it was Derek. I don't remember who it was. One of the Jaguar drivers made a mistake into the first corner, and we all got collected up in a big accident. I'm going to look into that when I finish talking to you, because there was one of the Harris races we had was an abysmal failure because we miscued, and there was a big accident in the beginning. I'm not sure who that was, but
yeah,
I have a question to ask myself. How's that?
Let's do that. That sounds good. We'll see. So yes, moving on to IndyCar. Now, anyone who's tuned into these things, I love IndyCar. I always have done. We had a quick chat off air, and I've said I've been hooked on it since about '88. So Chip Ganassi gives you a call, and you're not sure who he is, but did you just say, yeah? Was it something that you thought you'd just go and try and go and explore and see something?
It was a little bit more than that. I had 2 children then, so it was more of a life decision than just a professional decision.
Okay.
I had already signed a contract and was working with Tom on the next year's program, and I had to go talk to him and tell him that I wanted to get out of the contract, which wasn't. For those of you that remember Tom, he was a big, strong guy, and his character was exactly like what he looked like.
Right.
So it was very unpleasant, but he was good about it. He just said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yeah, that's what I wanted to do." So I signed the contract with Ganassi, who had bought the assets from Patrick Racing, I believe.
Oh, right. Okay.
And
that was Pat.
It was a brand new team. It was small. They were just starting in the process, and that's how I got involved. I wanted to win Indy. Indy, I thought that would be a great goal. So you have to set yourself goals, and I wanted to win Indy. And I had no idea what racing on oval was about.
Right.
And in my first test with Ganassi at Phoenix, I think it was in the second day, I was going down the front pit straight, and the left rear axle broke. And the car at maybe 60, 70 miles an hour, just turned sharp right into the wall. And I bit a chunk of my tongue off. And by the way, tongues heal very quickly. I thought I was going to lose my tongue. It was that bad. The tongues heal quickly. And
wow.
And I remember thinking, this might not be for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But
and that was your first experience on an oval?
That was my first experience. That's my first test. That was my first test. I mean, it's like you're walking down the road and somebody walks up behind you and hits you in the back of the head with a baseball bat. I mean, you're focused on the road, and all of a sudden the car just goes sharp right.
Wow.
And they call it a fence. For some reason, in America, they call a wall a fence. And they said, "Did you hit the fence?" And I said, "No shit, I hit the fence, and it's not a fence; it's a wall."
Yeah, I think a fence you can go through.
Yeah, that was my first experience. But the team got better, and we worked through some things, and then the first big jump we had Ford was when Ganassi took a big bet and got the Ford engine in the place of the Chevy engine, and we qualified second in 1992 for Indy.
Right.
And that was the first big step forward.
Yeah, that was when you were alongside Ari Lyndike, wasn't it? Was he in the team at the time with Ari?
We were teammates, yes. I think I qualified second and he qualified fourth or fifth. Yeah. Mario, the front grid was Guerrero with the Buick, me, Mario.
Wow.
I don't remember going back, but yes. And again, Lyndike was somebody who had won the Indy 500, and he was a wonderful teammate.
Yeah.
Amazingly talented, incredibly brave.
Yeah, I mean, he was the first IndyCar driver we had on here, and he was one of my favorite racers when I was a kid.
He's as cool as a summer day is long.
Oh, honestly, he's the coolest guy. I would say him and Danny Sullivan are the coolest guys.
He is fast. He's amazing. Yeah,
yeah,
he was amazing.
He was a guy who took to ovals, didn't he? I think he
said like a duck to water.
He said that he won 7 IndyCar races, and they're all on ovals. I think.
Oh, he's a cool guy. Very, very good at what he did on ovals. Yeah.
And you mentioned like Roberto Guerrero there. He was most unfortunate in '92, wasn't he?
Yeah.
On the parade lap and hit the wall on the the second parade lap?
I remember I was there.
You were right next to him, weren't you?
We're going down the back straight.
When he did it,
his car just went like this lazy left spin.
He just vanished.
Yeah.
What were you thinking then? Were you thinking?
It was cold. It actually snowed. There were light snowflakes during that race. It was so cold. And I think the Buick then, to his defense, the Buick then was like an on-off switch. You either had, I don't know, 700 horsepower or nothing. So he probably was trying to get the tires warm or whatever, and one of them turned. And once a car that's set up to drive at 240 miles an hour does not do particularly good at 30 miles an hour or 60 miles an hour. And he just lost it. It was numbingly cold. So he disappears. Now, I don't have a great history with the Andretti, so I'm leading the field into turn 1, and I just barely feathered the throttle just because it didn't feel right. Everything felt cold, and they parted me like as if I was a.
Oh, they went round.
They went by each side, inside and that was tough to swallow. But 2 laps later, I passed Mario, and I was second for a long time. And then I had the bottom of my car lost some screws, and I lost all the aerodynamics from the bottom because it was like a skid pad that was acting as an air brake.
Right. Wow. Yes, that was that was the race that I think if you made it to the end, you'd done well, because it was just carnage, wasn't it? I always seem to come back to Indy '92. I remember watching it as an 11-year-old thinking, this is ridiculous. It was just because it was when we had Channel 4 in England. It was on TV, and there was a commercial break every 20 minutes, and the cars would go around for 20 minutes and go, okay, we're going to go to a commercial break. We came back, and there was Paul Page was, there's a car in the wall. Every time there was a commercial break. And that year, it was just a car in the wall every 15 minutes.
It takes a totally different mindset to race at Indy. You're managing a car that you're keeping it as close to disaster as you can. But if you go just a little bit over, or the wind changes, you're going so fast, there's very little you can do. When I went there in the beginning, you would ask questions of drivers, and they said, when the car starts to spin, just turn the steering wheel down into the infield. And I'm thinking, you are insane if you think I'm going to just turn the car left, because you're always trying to save the car so it doesn't spin. Yeah. And I've spun before at Indy, but I never had the courage of pulling the steering wheel down, which
really,
to avoid a car, but you're always just managing, right? Just teetering on everything going dramatically wrong.
Yeah. I mean, look, again, I've been, fortunate enough to speak with, guys that have won the thing, and we'll come on to you shortly. But I spoke with Aaron Dyke and Danny, and spoke with Mario, and they've all said the same thing, and I always say the same response. Does it drive you round the twist when someone says, oh, it's just driving around in circles? Because it drives me up the wall. It's so annoying. I was like, if you're saying that, you don't understand how difficult it is, and all the little things that can go wrong. And as you say, like the change of wind direction, people don't think of that in F1 because you're going round and up and down. But if the wind changes direction at Indy, it can put you on the wall, just like that, can it?
It does. It does put you in the wall.
Yeah.
In the era that I raced in Formula One, Alan Jones was one of the toughest guys out there. And I did never speak to him about Indy, but I heard that when he was asked to do that, he said, there's no way I'm going to do that. And I heard from older drivers that Jochen Rindt had the same attitude. And you would definitely not paint Jochen Rindt with the not very brave brush when you follow what he did in Formula One. So it is, and yet people like Jackie Stewart were very successful at it, and Jim Clark won. And there is so much history at Indy.
Yeah.
And you breathe in the history when you're there. But it's hard. It's hard and it's dangerous. And I'll bore you with one short story. When I was driving for Menards, we had some of the quickest cars on the track. And my teammate, Scott Brayton, had qualified on pole. I think I qualified fourth. And it was a day after qualifying, we were preparing the T car. Everybody got to do a certain number of laps in this car. So I was first, and I was expecting to do the whole morning. And after 15 laps, the team manager, who I wasn't getting along with, pulled me out of the car and put Brayton in the car. I leave the track, and there was the days when you had a pager. You didn't have a telephone call, you had a pager. And my pager starts buzzing, and the message was, go to the Methodist Hospital, which is where they would always bring you after you spun or you hit something or had an accident. But you didn't have to be hurt to go to the hospital. They always wanted to check you. So I go to the hospital, and normally when you go to the hospital, you would go in and you go to the right. And as I'm going in, there's a nurse waiting at the front door, and she points me to this long hall down the left. And my teammate, Scott, had just gotten in the car with the same set of tires I had on, and 7 or 8 laps into his run, something failed in the car, and he was dead.
Yeah.
Just
There's
like
the skull.
I was supposed to be in that car.
Wow. I knew your teammates. I didn't realize that it was that close. Wow. Because the
didn't
accident
hit that hard. We were going 250 miles an hour in the straightaway turning into turn 1. But the pressure was so high in this carotid artery that he died on the spot. There wasn't a broken bone on it.
Because the accident, from memory, it didn't look that bad. I mean, we'd seen other accidents and he'd gone in and hit the wall, but that happens at Indy. And because he qualified on pole for the race.
Stayed on the wall the whole way around.
Yeah.
And the G-force was so high that his body couldn't take it.
Oh, wow. Goodness me.
But the point, it was a loss of a teammate and a great friend, but that was the risk that you will always run at Indianapolis when something goes wrong. And they can make the cars as safe as they want. It takes a very special mindset to be able to race at Indy.
Yeah,
and absolutely. Put all that behind you.
And I think from a fan's point of view, that's why it's always had something for me. It's always felt something different, because you've got to be something different to go and do it and to have success. And guys have won there 4 times. Obviously Helio joined the list last year. That's just unreal. Winning 4 times at Indy, it's amazing. But yes, we're just obviously running through. I mean, you raced. Just want to go a quick run through. You raced with AJ Foyt in '94, was it? I think it was. AJ Foyt Racing. Absolute legend in North America, isn't he? AJ.
He's a legend everywhere. He went through that period of the 60s and 70s, and every decade he won in.
Yeah,
it's incredible. He was the last one to win the Indy 500 with a front engine car.
That's it. Yeah. He ran it front engine, rear engine, and he won Le Mans, and
he was great. He and Dan Gurney. That's 2 of them. Great guy to work for. I enjoyed racing for him. That year that I raced Indy for him, which I was really looking forward to having him hooked up to my helmet, because there's a lot of conversations that go on in Indy with the people in the pits, and to have somebody like, I had only had Chip Ganassi on the radio, who had limited experience at that point, and then going to AJ Foyt was totally different. He was like just part of the essence of the 500. And going into turn 1, there was a big accident that I got caught up in, and that was the end of that. But earlier,
was that the one with Stan Fox?
Stan Fox,
yeah. God bless him. Obviously, he passed later on, but that was an awful accident, wasn't it? So
we didn't get to do a 500 with Foyt, which was bad. But we were. It was a good team. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, sure. Great guy to work with. A question from Simon Steele, which is actually my next point. The IndyCar, the IRL kart split, that That was a bit of a mess, wasn't it? When it all came about. I mean, did you have an option which way to go, or were you with a team that was going to always go one way or the other, or what were your
No,
thoughts?
I raced in America to race at Indy. I didn't race in America to race in Phoenix or Long Beach. Or that. I mean, the kart street races do not even remotely compare to Formula One races. It's not even
Really?
they're not even cousins. It's not. I'm not saying it's not exciting racing. It's just not to the. It's just a different thing. What
Sure.
makes Indy cars as exciting as they are, and they are very exciting, is the Indianapolis 500.
Completely agree. Yeah.
That's everything. That is the beginning and the end of everything. So to be out of the opportunity of winning the Indy 500 to me didn't make any sense. I would have gone back to Jaguar.
Really?
I could have done that quickly, but I no. So for me it was a no-brainer.
Right, and that's why you went, because well, this is the thing about the 500, isn't it? I mean, everyone remembers who won the Indy 500 each year, but people have got to think about who won the title, and that's the pull of the 500, isn't it? It's that biggest race.
Exactly, but only because there's so much history. America's a very young nation. To have something as old as, I think it's 103rd or whatever it is now.
Yeah.
That's up there. That's high on a historical level. So to answer your question, no, it was an easy decision for me. And I liked the rules. I thought the rules were interesting. The equipment was made available to everybody. What IndyCar does have some of the things that Formula One has, that you have teams that are very solid and have a lot of technical knowledge. Others don't, but they tried to make it so it was more that the driver had a bigger input in it, and that the pit crews had a bigger input in it. Because if there is no way you're going to beat a car that's 3 or 4 miles an hour quicker than you at the Indy 500, it's not going to happen. So you have to be in a certain envelope to be competitive. And when they come out with those new cars, everything was closer balance,
right?
Which made it more difficult in many ways. But it was really about a privately held company where outside people were trying to tell them what they were going to do. It was the Holman George family owned that racetrack.
Yeah, owned IMS. Yeah.
So they had other people that believed that what they were doing was wrong. And
wow.
There you go.
Yeah, it was a bit of a messy time. So you were in the RL, and a couple of years later, you set up Team Cheever. Was that something that you'd always had an eye on doing, or did you just think?
No, not at all. No. I was racing in a team. I had been hired to race in a team, and my job was, the teams were smaller then. Everything shrunk because the market was not accepting much. The sort of budgets that had been required previously were no longer required in the initial stages of the Indy racing. So my job was to drive, but to also guide the technical side of it. And there was somebody else in the company that was guiding the commercial side of it. Okay. And we started having disagreements. So the company was divided in two. Then I took my part of the team and did something with it. And then they took the other part of that team and they did something with that.
Okay.
And I was lucky enough to win.
Yeah. I was gonna say, you went there and sort of, I said it paid off. You had the first win at the Walt Disney World Resort race. That was the first IndyCar win, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You must have been pretty proud doing that in the car and the team.
It was good. And I lived in Orlando, so that was even better.
Oh wow, home race.
No, that was good. That was exciting. That was very exciting because we were like a band of pirates that put something together over the winter, and we came out and we won the first race. Yeah.
Fantastic. And obviously that year you came third overall, which pretty good first year for the team. Moving on to 98, I've got, from my research, you finished 24th and 10th in the first couple of races, but then came the Indy 500 in 1998. And obviously you've said that's the reason you go and race in North America. Did you feel confident going into that month or that that going into Indy? Was there a? Did you even
We
think
did not
you-
have sponsorship. We did
Yeah,
not
yeah.
have sponsorship. We had picked the wrong car. We had picked Reynard, which was just abysmal. It was good in Orlando and Disney World, but that was a slower track. But when you put it on a bigger track, it was very slow in the straight. It had a lot of drag. So
Right.
I had to go to Dallara and ask them to lend me a car that I would pay for at the end of the race. But to add insult to injury, we had run out of money. And after qualifying, some guy walks up to me and says, I own a potato chip company. And I said, well, good for you. And he said, well, I would like to sponsor your car. And I said, it'll cost X. And he said, that's fine. He said, but there's one caveat. And what is that caveat? He said, the caveat was, I have to pay you in potato chips. So we had a choice of accepting a ridiculous production of potato chips. But I had a relationship with a company that I had raced with before, which was Menards.
Yes.
And I got on a plane who I was competing against them. They were the biggest competition. And I went to Eau Claire where their headquarters is. And I managed to sell them the potato chips, and I left with a check, and we were okay racing into Indy. It was a good contract. And that just took a big load off everybody's shoulders. And going into the first corner, somebody hits me from behind.
Was that Mr. Yaley, was it?
It was Yaley, yes. And I almost spun, but I went so long sideways that the tires were square, like da-dum, 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 da-dum. And I went back to the pits, and I thought, well, just have fun. I mean, you're lucky you made it past the first corner.
Yeah, what would go through your mind after having all that had gone on beforehand when you were going sideways? Were you just thinking, oh, for goodness sake? Or was it just...
I don't even remember correcting, but when I look at it, I think, whoa, what a brilliant piece of driving. But I like Danny Sullivan, when he spun, if he were to do that 100 times, 99 times, he would be in the wall. It's just your day. It's just your day. And when it's your day, you're lucky.
It was like Danny has said many times, and he said it on the chat on here, and he said, well, there was a load of smoke. I felt myself spinning, and when the car stopped, I was facing the turn 2 sweet, so I put my foot in it and went.
Yeah.
Said complete luck. But so obviously, I guess, you said that you went out to have fun. Was there like a plan in place, obviously, just to get as high as you could? Was there a race plan from that moment?
Yes, we had a good balance. The car was very balanced on the carburation day. And yes, we had a plan, but the plan wasn't that complicated. We were getting good mileage. The balance, as you run Indy, you always try to take downforce out of the car. So on the last stint, you're quicker, and it worked. We were quicker. I had a big battle with Lyondike at some point, and I had a big battle with Lazier, and then there was a big bunch of us, and it just went my way. In the last laps, I just remember going into the last laps thinking, I'm not going to leave anything here. I don't want to finish second again.
Right.
So I was happy. I would have been okay if I would have crashed. And I just went as fast as I could. And I almost did crash coming out of 2 a few times.
Wow.
But almost only counts in hand grenades and atomic bombs. You don't have to hit a target.
Yep.
I'm going to have to wrap this up in a few minutes because my wife is waiting for me.
Yeah, no problem at all. I was just going to have a quick run through a few little fun things.
Go ahead.
When did you first start thinking I can win this race? Honestly, when did you think?
50 laps into it, maybe.
Really?
Yeah.
That soon?
When I passed Kenny Brack.
Right. And just very quickly, that feeling when you crossed the line, it must have just felt amazing. It must have thinking, God, I've won it.
It was wonderful. It was from on the way back, I just remembered a lot of times I'd spent with my dad at the go-kart track.
Yeah.
So it's the quietest moments you will have when you win the 500 is coming into the pits because no one's pulling you and asking you things. The minute you get out of the car, it's like a circus. Everybody wants something. You've got to talk to everybody. I think I won that when I was 41, and I was well worn at the end of the race.
Yeah.
And but it's a great team accomplishment, and everything has to go absolutely right. Look at Mansell, almost won it, And he got passed on a restart. Where he looked like a goat tied to a post.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. I mean, what I do remember about that, it was the interview, and I remember you said in the post-race interview, you said, "Oh, my dad said if you're only going to win one race, win the Indy 500," and you said that was for your dad. I thought that was lovely.
Yeah,
really
and
lovely.
He died a few years later, so.
Oh well,
there you go.
Wow. I'm just going to sort of skip through some of the little bits because you continued racing, and what made you decide to quit or to stop? 'Cause it was 2002, was it? You stopped racing competitively.
I think I started racing because we had some obligations that it was just easier for me to finish driving and finish them that way. Which is short for saying I didn't want to spend money on a race car driver. I owned a race team.
Yeah, fair enough. Very quickly, as I know you've got to go. Just got a very, few quick little bits. I just want to get your thoughts on. Michael Andretti looks like he's heading to F1 with the Indy team. It looks like something's in place there. Just thoughts on that? Is that a good move, do you think?
Andretti has an amazing, as a family, have an amazing history when it comes to racing.
Absolutely.
He won the Formula One championship with Colin Chapman and Lotus.
Yep.
Michael runs an incredibly successful IndyCar team. Formula One is not what it was in the 70s.
No. I think that's the concern, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not what it was before.
Yeah.
And Formula One is not a participation sport. You don't get a cup just for turning up.
No.
You will burn through money. But I wish them all the luck, and I hope that if they do it, I hope they're successful at it.
Yeah, absolutely, fully agree. Especially if they're going to be based in the UK, by the sounds of it, which is great.
Yeah.
Very quickly, many people have asked this. How did you come up with the design for your crash helmet? Because everyone loves it. It's a fantastic design. It's one of the best ever.
I didn't do it. My father did it. It is the Arizona flag. He did it on the kitchen table. It was the Arizona flag with the star in the middle, but with the American colors, the red and blue. Let's wait. I'll show you something.
Oh, okay. We are going to wrap this up very quickly, folks. Just got a few fun questions. Then we have to let Eddie go. But what a fantastic chat. Absolutely brilliant. We're just going to let him show us what he's going to show us.
This is the helmet I used in Rouen.
Wow.
I tested. See those little gold Goodyear things?
Yeah.
You only got those if you won a race. Those were the first ones I had.
Oh, wow.
And there's the BMW on the side. And that's the helmet I tested for Ferrari in. That's the only one I kept.
That's fantastic. Wow. Love that. I think it was Anthony Davidson said he copied your design. I think it was. Typical Brits copying stuff. Right. Just a few little fun questions before we let you go, because it's been absolutely fantastic. What was your favorite car you ever drove on a racetrack? Could you pick one?
Probably the Ligier in Detroit.
Yeah. Again, another car that looks superb. Love the look of it. Okay. Your favorite circuit you ever drove on?
Monaco.
So glad you said that. I'm so glad. Excellent. Very happy to hear that. Teammate you got on the best with?
None of them.
Even better answer. Love it. And the very final one. Now, this is probably a tough question. I'm going to list off just a few of the guys you've raced against here. You've got Hans Stuck, René Arnoux, Patrick Tambay, Keke Rosberg, Didier Pironi, Danny Sullivan, Patrese, Bobby Rahal, Jody Scheckter, both Villeneuves, Jacques and Gilles. Nelson Piquet, Alan Prost, Jan Lammers, Ayrton Senna, Mario Andretti, Michael Andretti, Alboreto, Warwick, Berger, Lauda, Mansell, Herbert, the Unzers, Fittipaldi, Sneaver, Mears, Gordon Johncock, Castro Neves, Canaan, Dixon, Franchitti. Many, 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 many great drivers. Who was the best that you raced against? Lauda. Yeah. You're the first person that said that, and it's great because, terrific driver. Very brave.
Incredible human being.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that answer. Right.
Good
We're gonna
talking to you.
sign
I
off.
apologize for losing the internet.
Oh no, that's quite all right. It's happened, as you mentioned, it happened once before, no problem at all. But thank you very, very much for joining us, Eddie. It's been
I'm sorry we
brilliant.
didn't answer some of these questions. Maybe you can answer them.
Well, that's a very quick. Okay, very, 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 very quick skim over. That's a very quick skim. Bum, ba-dum, bum, bum. Let's have a quick look before we go. Andrea Moda, worst car ever? Yeah, probably. Goodness me, what else have we got? We covered the Lola. I think we've covered them all.
And I do believe that Tom Walkinshaw could pull the outer rim of the steering wheel off
Oh yes,
when he's driving. I gotta go.
yeah.
Thank you.
Not a problem at all. Thank you very, very much, Eddie. Really appreciate your time. It's been great talking to you. And do say thank you to Jennifer and your team for arranging it. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Good talk.
Thanks
Good
very
talk.
much. Great
Bye-bye.
stuff. Good night, Eddie. Cheers.